Hello, everybody. Let's see here. Yes, there's the button. Welcome. It's noon. It's Tuesday. And every other Tuesday or so, I do a live stream where I just kind of share some stuff that I'm experiencing and learning. A lot of times it's WordPress development. A lot of times it's SEO. Sometimes it's business and process related things that I'm learning that I'd like to share that might be of value to you. And so my name's Toby. I run the Mighty Mo Design Co. We're a WordPress and SEO marketing agency in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We also do design work. We have a full design team, marketing team, and a WordPress team. We have all senior people at all the levels. So that's one advantage of going with us. Been doing this 19 years. So I run across a lot of things. One thing that I'm continually working on at the Mighty Mo, and my team can attest to this, is that I think process, as your business becomes more mature, process becomes more important. Right now, we have 15 people at the Mighty Mo, including me. And with each person I've added and each layer of complexity, the process has become more and more interesting and important, I think. So today we've been working recently on improving our publishing processes, and this is so we do a lot of SEO content writing for our clients, and this includes AI, AIO, GEO, all the stuff to get you ranked in search engines. So like this is all, the process is the same in terms of the content writing process. Like when it comes to like, hey, we actually have an approval flow. Someone needs to write the content, someone needs to approve it, someone needs to publish it. So that process, whether you're writing for a PDF that's going to go out or to for SEO, or maybe you're writing an ad, that process can be, or I should say my experiences here in building this process might be helpful to you. Now, we focus on WordPress, so the bulk of this conversation is going to be like WordPress tooling that can help improve your process. And I'll also describe where WordPress tooling fails and where, sometimes process the tools are kind of incidental to the process, or not as important as the actual process and the humans behind it. So with all that in mind, let me just share a quick problem. This is something I've experienced over the years and something we're continually solving for. So I don't have like a perfect silver bullet type of solution, although I'm sure people promise that. But anyone who runs a business of any sort knows that these silver bullet things don't actually exist. And so, but the problem is potentially you have a writer write something, you get revisions, you send it back to the writer, more revisions, back to the writer, revisions, writer, revisions, writer. And then people start getting pissed off and asking questions about the timelines. And so the stuff I'm going to share today is hopefully going to give you some ideas on how to fix that specific problem. And so the idea is that most teams don't have a content problem. They have a publishing system problem. And WordPress can be part of your solution to that. This talk is for marketing directors, managing teams, marketing directors who are managing teams, or maybe they're marketing, junior level marketers too. It's for freelancers, it's for agencies, anyone who's producing content. This could be valuable stuff for you. There are bottlenecks at every stage potentially here that this talk will hopefully solve a little bit, from publishing to approvals, consistency. And so at the end of this, hopefully you'll walk away with a simple workflow you can implement this week. So I'm going to outline just something you could bite into and potentially implement. I'm also going to pitch you a WordPress setup that supports a simple implementation. So normally I experience this a lot with every tool. And I've been the protagonist in this fight as well as the victim of this fight. And the gist of it is that if you can't explain your workflow if you can't explain your workflow in 30 seconds, it's too complex. I think that's a good rule of thumb to live by. So let's say you have, whether it's 6 to 10 steps, 1 to 3 steps, but you need to be able to explain it simply. And if you can't do that, it's probably too complex. Do you have a definition of done? What is done? Is it when it passes this specific stage of QA? Is it when the boss approves it? Let's get really clear on what that definition is, because oftentimes the boss thinks done is something different than what other people think are done. How about clear ownership? Every stage of your process needs a clear owner. It can't be, well, I should say, it oftentimes is a committee decision. My opinion is that you need one clear owner for every stage. And if the marketing team owns it, then no one owns it. The issue is that content gets stuck when you're waiting on someone, not a group of people. It can get stuck at a group in a committee or something, but the goal would be to remove the committee and just make people responsible. That's something that maybe you're experiencing. I've certainly seen it many, many times. There's like this idea of WordPress misuse, and I kind of define it as, an example would be installing 5 WordPress workflow plugins instead of just clearly defining a 4-step process. So you have 5 plugins for a 4-step process. There's something out of sync here. The gist of it is that you're using WordPress as a tool instead of part of a system. Whether you're using WordPress or some other tool to get stuff done, it should support the system. It shouldn't define your process. And no tool can fix a broken process. If we'll just leave it at that. Tools are things to be wielded. They don't solve problems sitting on a desk. And this next thing is specific to publishing anything, that you need a single source of truth. And so the problem is that I've seen many workflows where there is no single source of truth. You have stuff here, maybe Google Docs, maybe ClickUp, maybe your project management tool there, and maybe some stuff's in someone's brain. Google Docs, Slack, WordPress, nobody knows what the current version is. And so I always think, like, eliminate all but one. If you need to start somewhere, just have a single source of truth. And WordPress is actually a good place for that. And it'll, as we'll see later, if you use WordPress as your single source of truth, it can speed up the production workflow considerably. I've also seen workflows where people write in Google Docs as the single source of truth, and then you just basically copy and paste over to WordPress. That's also better than more than that. By Google Docs, I mean Google Doc. You need a Google Doc for your thing that you're publishing, and that can be the single source of truth. Where I've seen people run into issues when you have multiple Google Docs, or you have comments happening in Google Docs and comments happening in your project management tool, Jira or ClickUp or wherever. So again, you want all the action in one place. And so here's a simple, maintainable WordPress workflow, for example. And you can copy this and run with it. The gist of it is 4 stages. You're going to write some copy, and you have a draft, you have review, it's ready, and then it's published. Those are really your 4 stages of writing anything potential. I mean, I'm encouraging you to simplify it to at max 4. Maybe you can simplify it to 3 or 2, and that's fine too. What each stage actually means. Most teams fail because review and ready are not clearly defined, or maybe not defined at all. What does it mean when something has been reviewed? What does it mean when something's ready? Like, you need to be able to have a checklist that you can check off. So for example, if you're doing a draft, is the content written? Check. Is it in the single source of truth? Check. Great. Now you can move on to review. And first of all, who's going to own the drafting? Give it to one person to own. Next, run review. Again, draft, review, ready, published. Drp. We'll call it drp. So the next first stage draft, second stage review. So somebody's in charge of editing this document, and that person could go and gather feedback. But the idea is that the feedback happens once, and then the writer rewrites it, or maybe you just edit it yourself as the person who's in charge of the review. But you don't want to get in an endless loop. That's the killer of momentum, is like these endless review loops. I used to deal with this. My experience has been that those loops, generally, they're not fruitful. Like as helpful as people think they are and they're being, there's no such thing as perfect. And oftentimes the imperfect is what surprises and what generates the results. And so I always think, like, avoid the loops, put someone in charge, let them approve it. Now you go to ready stage. So your draft review ready. What are the check boxes? Is the final review complete? Yes, it is. Does it meet our publishing checklist? And we'll talk about that. But the idea is, like, does it have SEO meta, SEO title, and stuff like that? Does it link correctly within your post or page? Does it have a certain number of internal links? Does it link to things properly? Does it have pop-ups? You're kind of doing QA at this point. And then finally, the final stage is published. It's live. It's out there in the wild. I want to just take a step back here, because this ownership model is foreign to a lot of businesses that I have collaborated with over the last 2 decades. And I think part of the problem is that oftentimes we'll call it the owner of the company, but it could be the owner or the person in charge of the work whose butt's on the line. The owner doesn't necessarily, I always think, like, you don't want to get super deep. It's more important that you check the boxes sometimes, and that is the tone. You could have a box like, is the tone correct? Like, these boxes are things that you can create that are replicable. And then, the goal is to iterate and improve over time. So maybe, like, by time, I mean by over 10 drafts, not make the one draft perfect and then move on. Like, I would much rather, and this is what I encourage in my team, like, let's draft 10 SEO'd pages, and the 10th one will be better than the 9th better than the 8th. And like by the 20th, we're totally rocking. I'd rather that scenario than, and let's say it takes a year to produce those 20 pages. That scenario is way better and generates way better results than one page that's published after a year that's perfect. And so own it, give people ownership of it, make sure they check the boxes, but then move on. Let's talk about WordPress, which is, I love WordPress. I've been doing WordPress for about 20 years now. Let's just talk about WordPress ships with workflows that you can use for this. So every WordPress install on the planet, and there's about 1 billion of them, actually there's hundreds of millions, let's say that, literally hundreds of millions of WordPress sites. They all, when you publish something, let's say a page or a post, blog post or a page, there's a draft, there's this thing called status. There's a draft status, pending review status, and published status. So these are tools you can leverage internally without customizing WordPress install, without installing plugins. You can say, for example, let's say the copywriter writes it, and maybe they put it into a WordPress draft, and then you go, okay, now we have a WordPress draft. So the review is in WordPress draft, and then you go, when the review's done and it's ready, in that ready stage, then maybe you put it in pending review, and then the publishing is the published part. So, like, WordPress pretty much has those 4 steps built in out of the box. So just keep that in mind. If you want to enhance this with WordPress, there are some plugins you can use. Publish Press is one, Edit Flow is another. I don't usually recommend these WordPress plugins because I actually think they make it too complex, but you can. Like, if you wanted to bring all the scheduling and everything in-house into WordPress, there are ways to make it more feature rich. But so I bring these up as tools you could use within WordPress that give you that single source of truth. So potentially you could get rid of Google Docs, ClickUp, and just use WordPress for your publishing calendar. And these plugins such as PublishPress and EditFlow can do that. Let's talk about within WordPress standardizing the WordPress content template. So you might hear things like, well, we need reusable blocks or we need pre-built page and post templates. This is what I'm talking about. So I do encourage you to have some, we'll call it coded, pre-coded things, but you don't necessarily need to use code, but there should be things that are reused that'll save you time with styling and publishing. Basically, if you take out a lot of the guesswork and the spacing and the stuff like that, it can help a lot. But also included in that, your SEO meta title, SEO meta description. There are WordPress plugins that help with that. Rank Math is one. Yoast SEO is another. So you'll want to install one of those plugins. And this is just a checklist item. Did we add a meta title? Did we add the meta description? Great. Also, H1, H2, H3 structure. Does our single source of truth have H1s, H2s, and H3s listed properly? Cool thing within WordPress, and this is default WordPress, there's a table of contents block that you could add to your template on every post. You could also add a block that's like the too long don't read or the summary that's really popular these days. So keep that in mind. Another checkbox would be, our internal links done. Calls to action, CTAs, meaning like buttons and what are they going to do next? So they're here at your page or post. What do you want them to do? You should have a checkbox for that as part of your list. And WordPress has all this stuff built in. Like it's simple to create links. It's simple to do call to action buttons. And you could, in theory, create layouts and reusable blocks for the calls to action and whatnot. And then also create a ready to publish checklist. So I always think like each stage should have checklists. And this is how you can delegate authority and how you as a leader can kind of like move on and work on other stuff. And you don't need to be micromanaging this stuff as long as they're checking the right boxes. And this is the classic leadership problem. They have to be the right boxes. And I'm suggesting keep them simple. Is the tone correct? Check. This is early on. Is the tone correct? Check. And then later on, is the SEO title done? Check. Meta description? Check. Internal links. Are the images optimized? Check. Calls to action? Check. Did we assign it to the category? Check. So these are things you can just have checklists for. You don't need to micromanage these things. You could just ask or just have a physical checklist on a piece of paper. Say, good, all these are checked. Throw it in the bin. You're done. Move on. One thing to keep in mind, just in terms of like a way to know if your process is too complex. Does your team avoid the tool? Does your team hate doing the thing? That if you get that feedback, like, oh, I hate this tool, or I didn't want to do it today because I had other stuff to do. Your processes and tooling is too complex. And so I mentioned a couple tools. You can use WordPress and PublishPress. You can use WordPress and ClickUp or some other project management tool. You could build a simple AI tool using something like Lovable and then have that plus WordPress be part of your flow. But keep it simple. Do those if you're confused what to do those 4 steps. Draft, review, ready, published. Define each of those steps. You have a checklist for each step. Good. Move on. So one thing, if you're going to add one WordPress workflow plugin, you want to do plugins that support your existing workflow, not define it. And this is a common mistake with any sort of tool. Like people will go into a project management tool and go, oh, great, this has the workflows built in. And then they'll build their whole process around the tool rather than using the tool to support their process. And so keep that in mind. We already mentioned PublishPress and EditFlow. And those can, as long as you're using them to support your process, your existing process, and not vice versa, then you're in good shape. So here's a real potential workflow for you. And this is one I've seen that can work. WordPress is always at the end of the chain because you need to publish it. And let's say we're not talking for WordPress. Let's say we're talking your email, let's say MailChimp or something, that's at the end. And so ultimately you need to get stuff there. The cool thing about WordPress in particular is it's built for this. You could have WordPress at the very front of your flow. A lot of times in lieu of WordPress, I recommend something like Google Docs or Office 365. Have a single document. So step one, you need a single source of truth. And this could be Google Docs, let's say. So I'm just going to define a workflow for you. Content created in Google Docs. Then your draft, you move it to WordPress. And that's basically the same person doing that. Then the editor reviews. They say it's good. They click the pending review status in WordPress. Then the marketing director approves and they click it to ready. Basically, they say it's ready. And then then they give the direction to publish. And the direction could go to a marketing associate or a marketing assistant, virtual assistant, something like that to publish it. It's that simple. And as long as you have solid checklists around each of those steps, you'll be fine. I'm going to take a quick step back here. Common mistakes and what to do instead. One mistake, over-engineering. Do you have too many WordPress plugins that are doing this thing? Do you have too many steps in your flow, too many approval steps, too many approval rules? Are your checklists too intense? Like I said before, start with these 4 stages, one checklist for each. Leadership bottleneck is another mistake. And we've talked about this a little today. Like, as a leader, you've got to let go of the content. You're going to have a copywriter, probably a marketing assistant, and then maybe you're the marketing director that needs to approve it. You need to trust your people to do the work, and you need to set them up with systems that allow you to trust them. And usually that's as simple as a checkbox, like a checklist of things. And you can specifically define what does not need approval. Like you could just say, hey, is there post meta? Check. Is there SEO description? Check. You don't need to get into the nitty gritty. You're going to have to trust that they did the work. And so I think a lot of times I see the leadership bottleneck, getting stuck in things, just QAing things that don't need to be QA'd. Another mistake, endless revisions. I used to program emails for one of the giant B2C retailers in the world. And I programmed their email blasts that went out to millions of people every night, I think, maybe every week. I don't know. You wouldn't believe how many revisions would come in for this email. I mean, I bet you on an email, we would, first of all, our team would produce the draft of the email, like through a bunch of feedback. We would talk with the CEO, the CMO, the COO, and here's our email based on all that. And then here's the first round of revisions. They see that, we gather the revisions. But then as we got closer and closer to the published time, which I think was midnight on Sunday or something like that, the calls would start coming in, just like endless revisions of everybody who's like, jockeying and trying to get their thing out there. And, it was just really, in a way, really pointless and weird. Like, because at the end of the day, you're a major retailer, and the contents of this email, like whether we use this word or that word, first of all, this time, we didn't have metrics. And most of the time, like, you're not going to have metrics. Even at that level, you're not going to have the metrics that are going to inform the next week's newsletter. You're going to have metrics that are like, and you can A/B stuff, and in theory, but you're just A/Bing that week's thing that already went out. And this is why I think these revisions, and oftentimes the best stuff gets accidentally through, or it is not revised. The most raw stuff is sometimes the best stuff. So endless revisions, always kind of a red flag. Another mistake, your process changes every month. I always think, like, define a process, lock it in for 90 days, gather your team together and say what needs to change, and then make some changes. But you don't need to do that every week or every month. All right, so here's what you do next. I'm going to give you 3 immediate actions you can take. First one, step 1, just define. If you don't know what to do from here, here's what you can do. define a 4-stage process: draft, review, ready, published. Those are 4 stages for your, whether it's SEO content, newsletter, email. 4 simple stages. Assign an owner of each stage. Trust that owner to do the work. Each stage needs a checklist. And from there, that's it. That's your whole workflow. It's pretty simple, actually. And if you can do that, you'll be much happier, I think. So in closing, if your publishing process feels harder than it should, it's usually not a WordPress problem. It's not a tooling problem. It's a system problem, a process problem. So fix the system and process, and then you can leverage tools like WordPress to work for you. Hope you found this valuable. I try to do these every other week. Again, my name's Toby. I own the Mighty Mo, and the website is themightymo.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's TOBYCRYNS.com. I'm the only Toby Crines on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me. I have a contact form on my website. Also comment if you have questions or thoughts or ideas, whether it's about this one or a future one we could do. So again, thank you all. Appreciate your time. Hope you have a great rest of the day here.